Soul Butter, everybody,
Hi.
and happy spring and happy actually New Year.
That's right. The real New Year.
We're going back to all the way to episode 1, when we talked to you guys about the ancient calendar and before the Julius Caesar version of the 12-month calendar was put into place. And, we look back at ancient civilizations, we look back at old scripture, we look back to what was the original opening of the year, what was the original month that was considered the new year, and it was March in a lot of cultures. And so it is, the spring solstice is a day of complete balance where there is an equal amount of daylight hours and nighttime hours. So it is the day that's like a great reset for everything because of the fact that it is perfectly balanced in its natural form. And we move into the astrological calendar. The first sign of the astrological year, so the astrological new year, is Aries. And so we entered into Aries season just a couple of days ago. So I really do think it's undeniable when we move into this time of year to feel that vibration. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be a wellness guru or a yogi or a swami who's sitting in meditation every day to feel that connection with your own body this time of year. There is a feeling of wanting to go, to move, to clean things out, to start anew. And we're looking at not just a time of year as far as a season or something that's literally driven by the cosmos, the sun, the moon, all of those things. But we also can't deny the collective shift in this time of year when people are celebrating Passover. We are moving towards Easter. This is a time of rebirth. It is a time of resurrection. It is a time of reflection. And so it doesn't really matter where your belief system sits when the majority of the planet has their focus in that direction. You become part of a collective mind. And whether you are aware of it or not, that movement is occurring in your life. And so what we're going to talk about today is, we're lovingly calling this Bridge Over Troubled Water, just like the song. And a lot of us are sitting in a really interesting place right now in our lives where we are in the process of transformation, but the egg hasn't cracked. The baby hasn't quite been born. The butterfly isn't quite out of the chrysalis. But you can feel it. It's like this imminent feeling. And you're starting to push against the outside, right? And so that idea of being in that discomfort, and we've been talking about this the last couple of episodes from the perspective of labor pains. We use the analogy of tearing down muscles, flexing those muscles, what it takes to rebuild the muscles, flexing to the point of failure and using that word failure. And that word has continued to come up for some of my client conversations. It's continued to come up for me. I think how you reflect on failure is going to be very personal, because we all kind of have our own relationship with what failure is for us. But no matter how you dice it up, this place where we feel on the inside that it's time to go, but our outside world is not on board yet. Right? It's not reflecting. There's no reflection of what's happening inside in our outside world. And that triggers us on so many levels. And it can be very confusing. And as Egan says all the time, who's the author of confusion?
Right. That's Satan, man. That devil.
So, we're talking about this time where we really get to know ourselves. And, I was telling Amy just yesterday that, and it's not unfamiliar to me, I've gone through periods in my life where I feel like God has receded, right? Yeah. Where I'm not getting those God hits every day, all day long, and all of a sudden it's just kind of gotten quiet. Yeah. And the parent has backed off. right? It's like the little kid on the playground and mom or dad's gone to sit on the bench for a little while and just watch you play and see how you do, right? Not to say that, if you're about to jump off a 3-story, jungle gym, that the parent's going to swoop in and get you, right? But this is your time to practice those things that you've been learning. And, what did I use? I used the analogy of a little kid lost in a department store. It's like you're with your mom and you're hiding in the clothes racks and you're doing all these things because you feel the supervision is there, right? So you feel safe exploring. And then all of a sudden you come out from the clothes rack and mom's nowhere to be found, right? The parent has disappeared. And now you're amongst strangers and noise, and you feel small in these crowded places. You don't know where you are. And now the one thing that made you feel safe is out of your sight line, right? Now, we all know that the parent hasn't left, but out of sight line. And so a child thinks, I'm lost. I'm lost. I've been left. I've been abandoned. And that panic that starts to happen, the fear that starts to happen, right? And so that's, like this space that we can go into where we don't even realize that that's happened until the panic starts to rise. And then all of these other things start getting tested. So we wanted to have a very real conversation about what Egan lovingly calls the gap. So she's going to share some of her testimony about what that means for her and how that kind of applies to what we're all kind of moving through in this season.
Yep. So we've often on these podcasts reflected on this season in 2023, bringing up old things from which started in 17 around 2018 we were going through, and yet here we are again. What I'm about to say is from back in about 2018, where I had left my previous toxic relationship. Right before I left my toxic relationship, I had jumped out of the corporate world into entrepreneurship fully. I'd been an entrepreneur for a long time, but I really took the faith leap and gave up had to sell my house because I had a bad loan. I mean, I'm talking, I was just annihilated, ground zero. And I remember during that time, man, I could go on for 8 hours about how God came through during that time. Because he told me leave. He told me I was listening to him. He told me to leave. He told me where to go, and I was kind of sitting still and silent, and I could just hear him so well because all the noise was gone. Right, like you're talking about, like all the noisiness, it was gone, and it wasn't comfortable. It was very, very talk about panic. Yes, like it put me in a panic state of mind, but God kept coming through. So this is the point where you were just talking about, like where the parent's there, but it's just kind of watching from above. You kind of push the kid out and you're there if any emergencies happen. And it really reminded me of, I just heard, there's 2 scriptures about how the disciples were in the boat. The first time is the beautiful scripture, and one of my favorites, be still, right? And the seas are rocking and Jesus is sleeping in the bottom of the boat. Now, keep in mind, they've already seen him do miracles at this point, right? So they're in the boat's rocking, they're going to die, and Jesus is sleeping, and they're like, what? Like, who's going to wake him up? That's what I feel like. I'm not waking up. I'm not waking up Jesus. So finally, I don't know who goes down. I'm not quoting scripture right here, but somebody goes down, wakes him up, and they're like, Jesus, Jesus, we're in the storm. We're going to die. And he basically says, oh, you have little faith. Like, you've watched me. What are you doing? I'm here in the boat with you. And not even like a chapter or 2 later, they find themselves in the same predicament. And they're in a storm, but yet Jesus is off on the coast watching this all happen. And it references, it's just like you just said, like Jesus is watching, like, let me see what my kids are going to do this time. And they're panicking. They're panicking. Like, talk about the panic. They're panicking. And he's like, I am Jesus. I am here. I did all these miracles. You watched me stop the sea because I'm not in the boat with you now? Really? Like, grow up, kids. That's how I feel like, there's cycles of this through our lives. I feel like each level we go through the same cycle of the chrysalis and the unknown and the scariness and the panic, and it's just faith building, right? So during this time in 18 in my life, it's so funny, I won't say much, but I used to hate like camping, tents, hiking, outdoors, like ew, give me a cabin at least. Um, Now anyone who knows me knows I love hiking, I love the outdoors. See how God, he just shows up and changes you, right? But so a couple of my best friends from college were like, hey, we're going on this camping trip. You're welcome to come with us. We got your tent, we'll set you up, but it's a canoe and we're canoeing to each spot each night. And I was like, all right, well, I'm athletic. Like I could probably be good, like canoeing. So we go on this canoe trip, and right before I go, I'm really like I'm listening to God, and they call it the Gap. It's the Delaware Gap, and it actually is like I think there's like Jersey and Pennsylvania as you go through this river,
Mhm.
and it's the gap in between the land. And I was like, oh my God, God spoke to me so loud. He's like, that's where you are. I want you to really feel the place where you are in your life. You are in the gap, and you're paddling the gap. And I was like, mind blown. So during that season of my life, I call it the gap. It's the big in between. And I always say, like, that point in my life, I got in the boat with God. Now, Jesus was in my boat then. And he was rowing with me. It was really Amy Fox, so she would love to be called Jesus.
You
That's hilarious.
referencing her as Christ in the boat with you, yes.
But she was mean. She
Sorry,
was like, "What are
sorry,
you
Fox.
doing?" But it was a big lesson for me because one, I don't know how to canoe. Like, who did I think I was getting in this boat? But by the end of the trip, like you kind of get in the groove, and there were rapids. Like I talk about, like sometimes on that journey, it was so smooth and beautiful, and you can kind of look around and see the glory of God and the birds flying. It's so peaceful. And other times, like you're getting ready to hit rapids, and I'm in a canoe. Like that doesn't. I'm not a boat person, so I don't even know what that means. I'm thinking panic, right? We're going to capsize. Like, you remember you referenced the little kid who's like swimming, but the ground's right there and they're
Yes.
like hanging on. That was me going through the rapids. And at some point towards the end of the trip, I was like, Amy, the bottom, it's not like you're in 8 foot of rapid. You can see the bottom. I was just so all you do is I mean, when you are in panic, you can't hear anything else but those voices in your
And it's
head, like,
tunnel
I'm gonna
vision.
capsize,
Literally,
I'm
you
gonna,
go into
yeah,
that tunnel vision.
yes. So during that time of my life, the gap was just a space where, man, so many lessons are learned, so much faith building happens. And in those moments, I hate it for myself, but I love watching my friends who I know are on the journey go through it because I'm like, oh, what's he doing now? Because I know every time someone gets into that dark, panicky, where is God? I don't see him, I can't hear him phase of their life. I'm like, oh, they're being leveled up. That's what's happening. But when it happens to me, I don't like it. And the one time I remember, I think I was telling you this weekend, there was a moment in my life where so I had jumped off the corporate train, and a big part of my testimony is not only like not dating but not working, like as far as going and getting a paycheck every week. And the guy was like, I want you in this entrepreneurial, you know uh whatever path in your life. And man, the bills were tight, like all the time. So I was teaching. I used to be a cake artist, so I started teaching classes. And just as you know, Jenny, sometimes, man, it wanes really low, and like you're like, that's it. Like no one's coming to class. I got 3 classes scheduled, and no one's coming. I can't do this anymore. I have bills to pay. I have to pay the electric bill. I'm not eating. Where's my money going to come from? And every single time, I have them written down where like I just need some money for groceries, or I just need money for this bill. And it will come in almost exact, which was really annoying at the time. But I get now why. It was because God wanted me to say, it's me. He wanted me to know it's him. So now, I'm like, hey, you can give me more. Like, I don't need the exact amount. I know it's you now. But anyway, during that time, it just was so long, Jenny. I was there for so long in that gap, in that space. And I remember like, that's it, I'm done. I remember saying, I'm just done. I don't want to do this anymore. I was going to go get a job. I'm going to live like everybody else. I'm just going to get in the rat race and screw it. I can't take the pressure anymore. I have to pay my bills. This is stupid. God isn't like real in my head. God is real, but like the God I hear must not be real, because why would he want me like this? And I had two friends that morning. One said she was praying for me in that moment. These are the God moments, right? Like one was praying for me in that moment. I'm texting her like, that's it, I'm done. I'm hopping off this boat, struggling. Like, I don't know if what I'm doing is right. She was like, I was just praying for you. And she actually, also an entrepreneur, got a wholesale, one of her wholesale clients just sent her money, a whole bunch of money, like thousands, and was like, here you go. This is what I want for the next season. I'm just giving you money in advance, dropped in her bank. And she was like, God told me to bless you with grocery money. And I don't know why, because that had happened to me before, but it was like in that moment, she said, God told her to do this for me. And then I had another friend who isn't really like, she's a great person and she loves God and she's not as on the tight spiritual journey that I am. And she just started speaking all these words over me. You absolutely will not. You were designed for a purpose and you're going to stay in this boat, like, until you get to your destination, and you are not quitting. And I was like, and by the next day, it was the most powerful, probably one of the most powerful spiritual experiences of my life. So powerful, I sound like a crazy person talking about it. I like got up and I remember standing on the floor the next day and everything changed. It was like almost my feet and the floor felt different. And I remember going like this, like I had to physically get my balance. And I was like, what's going on? And I was like, everything's okay. Like this, the ground shifted. It was like I could feel that the ground had shifted that day and everything's going to be okay. And that was kind of like, I wouldn't say it was the end, but in my head, it was where all the panic ensued. Everything got quiet and I got more comfortable, and I got comfortable in the pain of that moment of the in between. And that's where my faith started building hardcore. And I can say since then, I've had so many amazing things happen, and I'm listening for God, and I know God now, and I know his character, and I know how he shows up, and I know how he shows up in validations, that I can't say that I don't have those moments anymore. I still do. And I think, like I said before, every new level, it's like you got to hit the darkness again. You got to hit that darkness, and that it's just littler spots in your soul that God's trying to level you up with this one thought. Maybe it is failure. For me, it was in the past. I mean, that's my season. Like, no fear of failure, Amy. Look into your failure. And there's that one spot that you need to level up. And so you got to go in the darkness with it and fight it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, God says it's not your might or power. It's just by the Spirit. So fighting is just giving it to him. But why does it take us so long to like you were just reading me scripture about how, like, just pray, just ask me, I'll give it to you. Why don't you just ask me? Like, just talk to me. I want to talk to you. I want to hear from you. And it takes us forever just to do that because we're too busy whining and screaming because we're panicking.
And the
So,
expectations, I think, are one of the biggest things that get in the way, that for whatever reason, regardless of how deep and wide our faith is, there's
yeah,
that little programming will pop in that says, but if you really were getting the return on your investment, it would look like this, right?
now,
And so, and
right
it
now,
would be happening right now, right?
right.
So like it's a parallel experience, and it doesn't always look like that. So, I am currently in the gap. Now I will say I have an extreme level of gratitude for what my experience looks like now versus what my experiences in the gap have looked like previously, right?
Right.
Because of the fact that I'm all in at this point, there is, there's only one life preserver that's getting thrown. That's it. There's no swimming back upstream. There's no, there's none of that. Where it used to be that in this process, in my panic, I would look to go backwards, right?
Yeah.
And that's not what it's like now. Now I am fully surrendered in the rapids and just being carried downstream and barely getting to come up for a breath of air as before I'm submerged again, right? But as I was, I was in a place yesterday where I was like, God, I need a God moment. Like I
Yeah.
need a God
At
moment
those.
right now. Like that's the
Yeah.
life preserver that I'm waiting for. Like throw me the life jacket so I can get through this period of rapids before I reach calmer waters. And
We prayed and
because
asked.
And so last night I got a little bit of a word. And I haven't told you this yet.
Yay.
So we experience these shifts in different areas of our lives. Sometimes it kind of seems like it's all happening at once in various areas of our life all at once. But there's usually a particular area that gets hit harder than the others. Even if the others are experiencing shift, there's usually one that becomes the priority.
Right.
And so I go back to 2018 myself. And when I went fully into my entrepreneurship as well. So I gave up my part-time job. I gave up the paycheck that I knew that I would have. And I went fully into my purpose at that time. And it was around that time that I, started to experience a deconstruction of my health, right? And my marriage was still a project on the shelf at the time. So, this idea of watching levels of deconstruction happen, right? At the time, like it was a pretty easy jump for me to go into full entrepreneurship. It was one of the most abundant times in my career. So that was an easy go compared to the other things that I was dealing with in my life. And I'm going through this in my mind last night as it's being shown to me in these phases where it was like, this got deconstructed and then it was returned to you. This got deconstructed and then it was returned to you, right? Like, but returned to you made new, right? So, and I'm sitting there listening to this being said to me, I returned your marriage, but a better one. I returned your health, but a better one. Why do you think that I'm not going to return your practice and your purpose? So it was like in that moment, I did get some reflection time of the fact that it was like, if you're going to look backwards, then at least look at the successes and look at those patterns of success. Stop searching for all of the reasons why you shouldn't believe in yourself right now. And that was another thing that came face forward to me, was that I don't know if it's so much my belief or my faith in God and the universe and the laws. It's how that translates to my relationship with myself, right? So do I believe in me? Do I have faith in me? Do I believe that I deserve that? Do I believe that I am worthy of it? Do I think that I am capable of it? So it's really an inadequacy of self that starts to come up in these times when the world isn't producing for you according to your expectation.
Now I'm going to try to find something that I just read this morning, and it just reminded me because I just posted it. It's Marianne Williamson. A lot of us have heard it, but I'm going to read the whole thing. Our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate.
That's one of my favorites. Oh my goodness.
Our deepest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure, which is normally the one we hear. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens most of us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small doesn't serve the world. Love that. So, I mean, I think, a lot of what we miss in our own journeys is knowing that, and I'm going through this right now, and so are you, because you just shared your testimony. You just shared your 3-part testimony on all your social media pages, and I just shared my first, and I'll be sharing 2 more soon. But what we lose in the panic, like you said, in that space of tunnel vision, is that we're not here for ourselves. Like, I constantly have to be reminded in paying bills, or where am I going, or what am I doing? We are here to serve God by being his vessels, so other people we can help other people. Like, if you've went before me, which in some things you have, and some things I've gone before you, like as partners in this world, and whoever those people are around you, like just think about how I know, well, I hope most people have had that person. Like if it wasn't for them, I don't know how I could have gotten through that, you know? And like think about your space in this world, that you're here to affect other people. Like God has you here so you can tell people your testimony. But when you're in the midst of that, like you don't even think about how, oh, this is going to help other people. But every once in a while, like I'll see something, like there's been this theme that I keep seeing, and it's like these motivational women going like, they're waiting for you. Like I keep hearing that. It might not be that exact thing, but like they're waiting for you, Amy. Like they're waiting for you, Jenny. They're waiting for you to get through this, because you gotta, there's a bunch of women back there and maybe some men that like are gonna need your hand. So we just forget that when we're in tunnel vision and we're grasping for air. Like we're like, well, what about me? I want to survive too. Like I can't think about everybody else. But in the end, that is the ultimate goal, is just to remember that it's not about you. That's really hard for us. We're such a self-centered society, right?
Mhm. And instant gratification. I mean, we've been trained more and more in that mindset over the last decade, with things available at our fingertips the second that we want it. And so we don't have to
Mm,
wait for it. And
yeah.
our attention spans have
Mm,
been reduced, our brains have changed. It is the need for the hit. We talk about it all the time, that dopamine hit, that we're looking for, that pleasure hit, and that stimulation, and that instant gratification of not
yeah.
having to wait. And so being put back into our place and understanding this takes us back to where we started, and we talk about the law of birth, right? The way that it's been designed, there is no, you don't get instant gratification when you are birthing something new, because there is a gestation time and there is nothing you can do about that. And if you go to try to crack that egg open early, what happens? You have a dead chicken on your hands.
Yeah.
you know
And just think
so
about that, like how uncomfortable, and how you can't do what you used to do. If we're talking about pregnancy, like you can't do the things you used to do. You feel different, you look different. Nothing is the same. And you have to get used to being in a space where you are developing something. And like it's not the same. I'm here with my sister-in-law now, who is about, I don't know, 8 months pregnant. And she's just, everything is, oh, a little harder. She barely can pick up her baby and she's walking around. I'm just watching her, like, that's what we are when we're about to produce something. And when it's something big, and that's when I talk about the faith walk. Like, I think in the beginning, there's these, little things. But for us, the big baby's here.
mhm. and it's
And
and
we're
Jen,
both
it
pregnant.
feels heavy. Like
It
it
does.
feels heavy. I remember what my body felt like right before it was time to
Mm,
go to the hospital. I remember that feeling, how uncomfortable it was, how crowded it felt, where I was stretched to the limit, and it was constant discomfort,
yeah,
and to the point where like you can't wait to get that thing
yes.
out, you know?
I mean, I had a foot, Xavier had his foot lodged in my rib, and I just thought it was broke. I kept telling the doctor, my rib is broke. We need to x-ray it. It is broken. It was excruciating the last month. They're like, no, he just lodged his foot up there and just pushed. Every once in a while, I just push on it. And I remember when I pushed him out, I was thinking about that. Like, get the foot out of my rib. And it did. It was instant delivery from the pain.
And then
Yeah.
you've been delivered this new project now that requires all of the care, and so it's going back to that idea of all you have to do is ask, and being in that place of prayer and meditation, and constantly just putting it down, right? You just keep putting it down and keep giving it away, keep giving it back in that prayer time. And before we hit play, Egan was like, well, God wanted to make sure that if we truly are committed to our integrity and our authenticity, and we truly are committed to walking the talk, being in the exact space that you're about to talk about. Otherwise, you're just regurgitating what somebody else has said, right? It's not authentic, it's not real. And the fact that in order to have prayers answered, that everything has to be deconstructed that's going to be in the way of receiving whatever it is that you're asking for. And we so quickly forget that because we go into panic. All we see is the deconstruction. All we see is the destruction, right? And the things that we're losing, the things that are being taken away, instead of the space that's being made for whatever is about to get delivered. It's a time where gratitude practice becomes the only ointment that's going to get you, through those times. And, I'm grateful that even as I'm struggling for air,
Yeah.
that every time my head breaks the surface, I can see clearly, I can hear clearly, that those things are in place, but it doesn't make it any easier to get through that transformation process.
No, and as I said before, like it's always important to have someone, even if it's one person, that you can be authentic and vulnerable and share, that can pray for you, that can hold you up, that can bear the burden. Because sometimes, like frankly, in the midst of it, sometimes you don't feel like talking to God. He's like, well, just ask me. And maybe that's why we don't ask, because sometimes your conversations with him are like, why would you do this to me? And he's like, I'll answer you if you just shut up. But, I think it's just so important to have some kind of spiritual partner with you, whether it's a spouse or, that would be awesome if it was, but sometimes it's not. So a lot of times, like while you're growing, you really need someone that can stand beside you. Just like if you leave me a message, and I've left you plenty of messages like that, like panicking, help, but it doesn't sound like that. Like that's how it sounds like when you leave me a message, it sounds like that. But you're just like, like, forget it. Jump off this ship. This is stupid. Nothing's working. That's what it sounds like when we do it. But it's more like, oh, Jenny's saying to me, she's panicking. I know what time it is. I'm going to pray for her. And that's all I did. I didn't react. So if you are that partner, like you don't have to react. We've said it a million times, like listening sometimes is the only thing you need to do. Just listen, take it on, pray for the person, and they're going to work through it. But man, it's not just pray. I really do believe in the power of prayer. So when you have that one person that's just bearing the burden, holding you up, going to God when you can't go to God, and just holding you through that time, I look back on my gap, like I'm back in one again, but like when the big gap, I think of like, man, how many people helped me up? And I'm still doing my testimony. I'm getting people saying, I was praying for you during that time. I don't even know you that well, but I just felt in my spirit to pray for you. Like I always kind of felt it. Like I kept saying I'm suspended. That's what I kept saying in the gap. Like I kept saying, I feel like I'm suspended. Like I took the leap of faith and I got like caught in the air, like no gravity. I wasn't floating. I was just kind of like, "Where?" I just kept, I'm just suspended. And I felt like at a certain point, I felt like I was being held up by the prayers of people around me that were holding me. And I just think that's so important to like, one, as the supporter, listening, praying, and being able to hold people through that space too is really important. But also for you going through the gap, like, man, you better start mounting up the soldiers. Like I always think of like me and my people. There might be a few of us. I don't even know some of them, but I feel them coming with me. It's like I always feel that like, the woman king, like we've trained for this. Like let's put on our armor like we're going to war. Like it's the war against the thoughts. That's all it is. Like it's already done. If God gave you a vision, it's already done. Like the point is like you believe it, okay, you receive it and you speak it, then like that's it. Like it's already happening. But to get through that, the army of the enemy coming at you in the head, that's what makes me like, that's Amy Egan. I'm gonna like, I want to fight. Like I want to fight, I want to go to the gym and I want to lift heavy stuff and I want to like I have the lion in me where I'm like, you know, and I feel like, you know, you're right there next to me. Like we talk about all the time, armor up. We got to get
Mhm.
armored up. Like let's go. And God says when he talks about the armor of God, the only offensive weapon is the sword, which is the word of truth. That's all you got. The rest of the stuff is defensive. That's all you got is all the defensive. Oh, defense and offense. You remember we were just
Mhm.
talking about that. Like everything's defense. You only have one weapon, and that's the sword, and that's the word of God. So you can go into war with like God said this. God gave me this vision. It's gonna happen. God says I'm great. I'm not a failure. I'm not all these things. I don't believe you. Like it's like this, like the word. You have to speak
Mhm.
the word. So, but you should tell your story because it was really good. Your the hockey.
Oh, the hockey analogy. Yes, now that
Yeah.
I'm a hockey family, you know, it usually happens in the last like minute of the final period of a game. And in order to like you've got this one little window of space where you potentially could win the game, right? And sometimes what they do in that last little time is they'll pull the goalie out of the net and put him on the ice or put him on the deck. You know, we're a deck hockey family. And so the goal's wide open, but they do that to have an extra player on the team. So it becomes a full offensive move, but they have to double as defense at the same time. But it really is an offensive move, right?
Right.
And so there's the net, unguarded,
Wide
nobody
open.
there, right?
Defenseless.
And so, you know, we were talking about those things that will take you out, you know, where you're fine. Like during the day, you've got all these
Mm,
defenses in place and you can keep that, you know, you can just keep flicking it, you know, off your shoulder and you're doing
right.
okay. And your defenses are in line. And then the time comes where it is all men on deck, right?
Yeah.
And that last offensive push right before the buzzer, we leave the goal untended. And it's a terrifying feeling. And it's that place where, you know, that sigil, that sovereign space that was keeping all those voices at bay, now it just floods in because you're in that final climb, you're in that final battle. You know, I think about it, we
Mhm.
was using it as an analogy for the immune system. You know, the immune system is in full offensive mode. It's fighting off the enemy, right? And so all of your energy and all of your focus is going into that place. And the walls, you know, whatever was damming back those thoughts and all of those things, they just come pouring forward.
Mm,
And
jeez.
you think about like you can't fight an enemy that you can't see.
Right.
So
Right.
it's like in that one moment, all those enemies that were hiding
Hmm.
now are all out to be seen.
Right.
And you realize those thoughts that are still back there creating turbulence and that can get the best of you. So if you didn't have those moments to have all of that completely visible, you would have no idea what it is that you're attempting to purify, to strengthen, to clear out, you know. And I those are that's where I tend to put my focus when I go into these places where it's like, okay, what am I being presented with? What is that
Right.
thing? Right. And Tim Ross just had something pop up. I think it was even yesterday, where basically his message was obedience does not equal happiness.
And like it actually equals the opposite usually. That's hilarious. Obedience means not, well, I want to say not happy, but like it definitely does not the same.
No, it's not one of those things. And this is what I mean by we have these very blurred expectations of what this journey is supposed to look like. And, you know, we've talked about this before. We've talked about the spiritual bypassing, where we talk ourselves into this place of rainbows and unicorns, and
Yep.
anything that, you know, doesn't line up with that, we cancel it.
Right.
We just
Right.
cancel it.
And it's it reminds me a lot of I love I used to follow Hillsong Church as and when I was in my darkest, probably I was 17. I used to listen to it. It's all I put on the TV. I stayed in my bedroom and I just had Hillsong Church on the whole time. So nothing bad against Hillsong Church, but I remember when all of these like I can't stand them. Like there's Christians who go out and find people that do it wrong, which is like so antichrist to me.
Mhm.
And they were talking about how, oh, it's just these businesses and they study how to invoke feeling to keep people coming to the church. So whether it's worship or whoever they hire to be the pastor, and they were talking about it. And although I can't stand that stuff where people attack each other, there's a point there where it's not just in church, it could be in any realm of spirituality that you're talking about. Like these things bring us good feelings. And it might be bad feelings, it might be scary feelings, depending on what you follow. But you get addicted to the feeling, and like you said, the dopamine
Mhm.
hit, bad or good. And there was one point where 2018, I had left, and I remember I was riding in a boat with my best friend and her husband, and I heard really clear because I was like, I was literally like staring out the window. And God said, Amy, feelings are fickle and they're not of me. And I never forgot it. And it was so crisp and clear that I was like, was that God? Because it was just one of those moments where it was, I can't explain it. Like, unless you've had those moments, like it wasn't audible, it was in my head. And I always say, it's like my conscious, but it's something I would never say. And I'm almost confused by it when it's God, because I'm always like, what? That doesn't even make sense. And I go on a journey to research and how our feelings are just our ego. Like our feelings are just, we take facts and it goes through the ego. The filter goes, there's the ego filter, the facts that are happening around us. It goes through that filter and then we get feelings. They're not of God. Now, did God create feelings? Yes. And I'm counter
Mhm.
arguing with myself because people say to me all the time, like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Of course, feelings are of God. And I'm like, no, he gave them as a tool. So we say, like, can you get angry? Yeah, you can get angry. It's what you do with your feelings. Put them under the microscope, put them and study what you're feeling, because they're going to tell you lots of stuff about yourself. They're going to tell you a lot about that ego filter, and then you can pull back through and look at the facts in a whole different light when you remove that filter of the ego. So feelings, you just have to be really careful when you get that surge of feelings, which I know what we're talking about right now. It's all feelings. To me, that's all that is. All those thoughts turn into feelings. You're like, oh my gosh, it hurts. I don't like it. I'm uncomfortable. What's going to happen? But if you stop for a second and think, okay, I'm really feeling a lot right now. Like, to feel, like I go back to that church example, like to feel anything bad or good, like doesn't mean that that's God. And sometimes we apply it to God. We think like, oh, we're feeling good. That must be God. These synchronicities that are happening. I mean, we get that hit and we're like, ah, that we always talk about the
Mhm.
synchronicity aggression. We're like, ah, but it like feels so good. It's a high. But God's like, I'm not gonna give you a hit every time that like you want to connect with me. No, I'm not doing that. I'm standing outside the boat. You're in the storm. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to have faith? Are you going to look? You said something earlier, like you have to, when you're in this space, when you're in the rocky and when you're in the rapids, you have to remember the last time you went through the rapids and the last time.
Mhm.
It's like a faith accountability. When I remember doing it the first time and the second time, and I've watched people do it the first and second time, and maybe they're only on their third rapids and they're like, oh my gosh, and they're freaking out. And I have to remind them, hey, look back. Go take an account of every time you've been in this space and how God brought you through it. Because in the end, that's faith building. That's what, like, when you're talking about, like, it's different now. It's
Mhm.
different when we're full in, like, I'm full surrendered, I'm wholly surrendered. God has everything in my life. Like, there's no turning back now. The last time I turned back was the one I just told you about. When I woke up, the ground shifted. I was in a different place. I was done. But right now, I have to, like, when I get in this space, it's like, I reach out to you. I go, Jenny, I'm off today. I'm feeling off. I don't know where God is. I'm panicking a little bit. Let me go back to my journal. Let me go back. Let me be with God. Let me get still with God and hear him, which is really, really hard to do in that space. But you gotta push through it and get alone, get with God, try to remember, stay in gratitude, like you said, stay in gratitude. And gratitude to me not only comes from the present, and I think it's powerful to have gratitude for the future, but like go back and like really reflect on, like, God is not going to leave you. He's not going to forsake you. He's just standing outside the boat. Can't even really see him. I just feel like I could see him just like, oh, my child, you have little faith.
You know, it just hit me like a lightning bolt. We're going through a retraining of habits with my 10-year-old right now to try to establish some really good accountability before he becomes a middle schooler. He's in 5th grade right now, and he's getting ready to go into 6th grade. Now, our school structure, we actually have junior high, so he won't actually move buildings until he's in 7th grade. But, you know, this idea of being cared for like an elementary student versus becoming a young adult that is required to have self-motivation, accountability, responsibility, right? And
So you're saying he's in the gap too, huh?
he is. And we just had a meeting with this teacher, and she's like, he was doing really great on the behavior modification. We could go back to that. And my husband and I were like, no, we can't keep hanging the carrot out, right? There needs to, at some point, we need to move into a place where the accountability and the motivation comes from within. It's not just the carrot that's hanging out there, right? And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's like, what are you doing it for? Are you doing it for the carrot? Because that's not moving in service. That's not obedience. That's the near enemy to it, right? Where you say that you're doing it and you're moving like you are, but the only thing that keeps you going is the carrot. And once the carrot disappears, then you go into complacency and apathy and, well, there's no reason to do this anymore. And then you weren't doing it for the right reason in the first place, right?
Okay.
So the fact that this is outward in my life and training my own child in this transition into a place of being self-propelled for the reason of integrity alone and doing the right thing, because the alignment that you experience in your soul is the reward, right? And it's just so hard to remember when we've been trained this way our whole lives. Do it for the carrot. Do it for the carrot.
Absolutely. When you were saying that, I was thinking of just in general, like how people, whether it's on the job, I'm thinking of like you get a reward at work, or maybe it's like you are a service person, right? So you are out and you're serving the community and people are lifting you up and and then you don't feel that anymore. Like those people are the ones that end up spiraling in the end when you're not doing it. We see it everywhere. We can see it in politics. We can see it in churches. We can see it in any type of leadership role. If they're there, it becomes that like back to ego. It's all like hitting the ego. When you can see something is inauthentic, right? Like we always talk about authenticity, like remaining in your true self requires like you finding, in coaching, we always say the why. Why are you even doing this? Why are you even in the boat? Like, what are you doing? And like, where's the end goal? Because if you don't have that why at the end and you're just chasing carrots, you will jump out of the boat and you will fail. Like, talk about failure. Like, you will end up failing and it will be ugly because God didn't send us here to fulfill our ego or get those carrots. Like, tell people could tell us we're great, or we can get that hit of dopamine or whatever that means to us. Like, we've got to have the why to get through, that space that we're in, the gap. And in the end, like when you have the why is ultimately, and should be, if it's authentic, should be service. In the end, it should be service. Why am I going through all this pain? Why? Because I want to grab other women and pull them out of their gap, or at least I can stand there and tell them how to paddle. Like I can be on the shore, like, look, I'm gonna get in the boat with you for a while, but eventually I got to get out, and I'm gonna teach you how to paddle. I want to coach you how to paddle because I know the pain. And I understand it. And like we just said, like we still go through it. We're not immune. We're not immune. We're going to be surfing this thing constantly.
Mhm.
But man, aren't we so, talk about gratitude, aren't we so grateful that it doesn't hit as deep
Mhm.
anymore? Like it doesn't, we feel it, it's surfacey now. Like we're like, all right, here we go. Like I said, put on my armor, go into battle, get my girls, here we go. And it ends quicker. It does get better,
Mhm.
even though the cycles, as we say, the cycles keep coming. But it's different now for sure. Um, and I guess we're gonna end, or we can ending
Mhm.
soon. So I was
Mhm.
just gonna talk about, we talked a lot about the bridge, you know, there is a bridge over the troubled water, and what that is.
And so, I'm thinking it's not just a one-dimensional idea of the bridge, meaning that this is something
Right.
outside of yourself that you're waiting for it to appear, that you have to figure out what that bridge is for you. How are you the bridge for others? How are you that bridge
Right.
for yourself through
Mm,
this space that, how can God provide you with something that you aren't willing to provide for yourself, to be able to
boom.
find in you and being able to figure out what that is. And that takes prayer, meditation, and time. And there's no better time to do when you're sitting in the egg, right? When you're sitting in that space and you're starting to push against the outside. And, what's going to bridge the birth? What's going to bridge that for you? What's going to be the bridge between that transformation time into a full resurrection of this new self that wants to come forward? And that's going to look a little different for each person. But it's in this space of discomfort, the bridge is the growth that you are willing to look at, that you're willing to participate in, that you're willing to authentically actualize through. It's, why am I uncomfortable right now? And that question that you ask yourself, what is so uncomfortable about this space for me?
Right.
Why is it creating panic? What am
Yes.
I afraid of? And those things in
Mm,
that space become the bridge of you being able to cross to the other side. Because, like you said, the sword of truth, the only thing that's going to get you through that battle is taking a really good hard look at yourself. And that only happens in that space of waiting, and in that space of stillness, and in that space
mm,
of struggle. There is a very quiet time where you can explore, and your emotions are part of that. And so I shared with my class last night, for the first time, I've never really spoke out about a vision that I had back in 2018,
yes.
where I was in a rough patch, and I was laying in bed. And I think Brian wasn't there. He was traveling. So I was laying in bed by myself. And all of a sudden, this huge storm of emotion came forward and completely overwhelmed me. And it was one of those moments where you kind of feel like you're going to die, like it's going to take you out. Like that
Yeah.
emotional storm is going to, that's it. These are your last breaths that are happening right here. And, you know, all of a sudden, the energy shifted in my room. It was like everything got quiet. And Mother Mary appeared by my bedside and
Mm,
whispered in my ear, don't run from those emotions. Go into it, face it,
right.
go inside of it, and ask them where they came from. Ask them what their origin is. Ask
Yes.
them to give you words to speak over what all of this is. Basically, figure out what its parts were. What was the anatomy of this experience? And where did it all come from? What was its origin? And instantly, I was given an answer when I did that. And everything calmed down. And I grabbed my journal and I started writing it all down. And I received so much wisdom in that moment. And that was the beginning of me becoming the giant nerd that I am now about the power of the emotional body as a navigational tool to your wellness, to your happiness, to your personal growth, you know, that this truly is the bridge between you and a higher level of balance of self and soul. Like that is the bridge. And so being able to have the courage to go into that space and speak to yourself and figure out that the you are not run by emotion. You are not controlled. They don't own you unless you allow it. They are a product of you, right? They were born out of you, out of your humanness. They were born out of your humanness. So how do you take all of that and use it as it was meant to be, was a navigational system to navigate this gap, to get in there and figure out what is your next level of growth and what's the origin of what's holding you back.
Yes. So good. It's just so good. I mean, I know we're wrapping up here, but I just think about the why, but also what you just said. Why are you doing what you do? And so I'm summing up basically like, and the why of what you're doing, what you do is also questioning when you do hit these moments, like, why am I feeling like this too? So two different whys, but why am I feeling like this? And a lot of times, especially if you have a great team around you, a wellness team. I mean, when I was going through it recently, Jenny actually was able to run Emotion Code for me, and failure was the one that came up. Failure and fear of judgment. And that took me on a journey. Like I went deep into it. I meditated on it, and I'm sure I'm forever gonna find more and more things. But like the fear of failure for me, and I know Jenny as well, and so many of us, produces this, this person who has to perform. We have to perform. We're high performance people. So like we go into these spaces where, just look at where we are now. Like a lot of times we're thrown into the rapids because we're not performing. So you must be failing. And so this is what we do. We ask God, why are we feeling like this? Why are we spiraling out? And sometimes you can just meditate and God will speak to you and let you know. Sometimes you need a friend to do it, but um being able to capture that emotion and the reason for it and dig down in it. It's just like I was just telling someone the other day about therapy. It's like who are new to therapy. And they were kind of like, I already know this stuff. Like I'm just regurgitating. Like, okay, my mom did this, my dad did that. I don't get it. It's a waste of money. Kind of, I heard it in the voice. They weren't saying that. And I just said, there's something about the truth in the word and speaking it and being able to bring things to light to where the next time you experience that, when your therapist is telling you, hey, you do this, you shut down because this is happening. Ultimately, you don't feel like you get to have a voice because you weren't allowed to have a voice, right? So like the next time it's going to start to get clearer. And it's the same thing what we're talking about. Like when you identify, why am I like this? Why am I feeling like this? That's what this process does. It brings things to light. And then when the new situation comes, you go, oh, I know this is failure. Why am I feeling like failure? Do I really believe that I have to perform to be of value to people right now? Does God love me anyway? Is God going to show up? Yes, he showed up before. These are what the conversations sound like in our head when we're able to, and you said it before, like I think before the call, like ultimately, like you can get in a spiritual space where like I believe I'm the same space as you. Like I believe God's gonna do it. My faith is strong. But the problem is me. The problem is me having that belief. Or not just like this magical fairy belief in God, but it's like doing the work. Like doing the work and figuring out like where are the strongholds? That's what I call them, the strongholds over your life. And figuring out how that applies. And the next time they show up, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to do the work? Are you going to meditate? Are you going to study? Are you going to try to evolve out of this? And I don't know if we're ever delivered. I don't know if we're ever delivered. Maybe we are. Maybe some people are if they believe. But I have a feeling that failure is going to keep popping up for me at every new level. But I have the weapons, I have the information I need, I know how it shows up in my body. You know, you were talking about like, how does that come out of your body? I know how it comes out of my body. So I know the pain that I feel, I know the struggle, I know the heaviness. So you can start connecting these things and get out of them quicker. The bridge.
Yeah. And I mean, let's go back and just as a reminder in a resurrected season, for those of you who know the story about the resurrection, that it was only it was only by the scars and his voice that he was recognized, that Christ was recognized, because of the fact that he had been made perfect, right? So I use the word perfect carefully because of the fact that we can only work within the level of consciousness that we have right now. What it is that we know, what it is that we've discovered, that's what we get to work with, right? In this moment, which is why we work in levels, why we work in layers, right? Because we have to move to a new level of discovery, a new level of consciousness before we can work with that thing, right?
Right.
So in your current place, if you were to be a resurrected version of yourself, what would that look like, right? What would be your version of the perfected self at this point? But thinking about it from the perspective of being reborn through your service contract with God, not like the perfect version of me has no forehead wrinkles and like,
Right.
I mean, if you want to put
No
all those things
11.
on your list, go for
Right.
it. But we're looking for
Right.
something that's a little deeper than the skin, right? We're really looking on a soul level. So what would that resurrected soul look like? What would the characteristics of that be? What would that feel like inside of your life? How would that show up inside of your life? So these are some of the journal prompts we're going to leave you with,
Yeah, I love it.
in this reflection time of, trying to figure out, how can you use this growth period to the best of your consciousness, right? Because if we take this opportunity and we accept this proposal of growth, then we will be given a resurrection, right? We will be given that thing. So what's it going to look like for you? And, as far as a team and a practice and something that you could immerse yourself in to learn more, we're going to plug ourselves here for a minute. I am starting a monthly group coaching program called Feel It to Heal It. And it is about all of this. It basically is an opportunity each and every month to dedicate 75 minutes to yourself. That's it. 75 minutes a month to have a check-in with yourself, where we're going to talk about the spiritual season. We're going to talk about what it's provoking inside of our humanness. We're going to talk about how to do what I had an opportunity to do in that beautiful vision that night, where it's to go in, sort it out, and ask what the origin of that thing is. And what is it meant to teach you in that season? What is your charge for growth in that time? And to teach you what it is to be an emotional being, because it is a huge part of being human. And it is a tool if we know how to work with it, if we have the language for it, right? And if we understand the process of what's even going on in our biology. So I'm going to be teaching that every single month. There are memberships available and not required. However, as we know, with any level of coaching or self-worth, the commitment and the ongoing work, so meaning consecutive appearance each and every month, is going to give you what that long term that you're looking for. And Amy's cooking up something brand new. I call it her new 12-step program, but
Yeah, 12 steps. My program is a part of my retreat that I already host, called Putting You First, but it's actually for the whole weekend is designed around this journal that I created that is literally my becoming, unbecoming and then becoming, and it's called Redefining Me. So we start with the question that God asked me when I turned 40, which is, who are you? And I went on a journey to redefine myself. So I have literally laid it out detail by detail, and it kind of takes you on a journey. So this is something that you would sign up for. It's a weekly program for 12 weeks. And you have the option to skip that and just go to the retreat. You could go to a retreat, but the retreat's probably going to be a little deeper now because I think Jenny and I are going to be merging. So it's going to be pretty darn powerful. Because what she does is what I do is what she does. It's all the same thing. It's just it's going deeper into kind of different spaces in life. Like for me, it's like, who are you? Why are you who you are? How did these emotions come to be? Where Jenny's like, okay, you have these emotions, you got that, but what are you going to do with them? And how do you, it's hers is more like the next step. I'll come to mine and then go to hers. But if you're already on that level and you've did the work, I actually would love to go to Jenny's. I'd be like, I want to be in the classroom too, because it's going to be amazing.
So we do have some seasonal tools coming up. My Feel It to Heal It is already open for registration because it starts on April 13th, but Amy's going to be launching her program very soon. So please keep an eye out for that. And where would be the best place for them to go to get those announcements?
All of my coaching is under Rebel Airs. So it's Airs, HEIRS. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram. And then through Soul Butter, you can always hit me through any of these avenues. And if Jenny sees it, she'll send it over to me. But Rebel Airs is my coaching business.
Okay. So your invitation for this part of the season is to use this time to figure out what your bridge is that's going to get you to the other side of this. And it's going to be some of the most important work that you do in this season, because this is truly, when we reach this point, it's where the most vital and profound wisdom will come forward if you make space for it. And the ointment for this.
The ointment, I think you said earlier, is gratitude. I think being in a space of gratitude, like I mentioned before, like being able to go back and take inventory of all the times that you've experienced probably the same thing, just on a different level. See, how did God come through for you? But also gratitude in the moment can help. Like you're breathing, you're living, your kids are well, you're whoever, you can go deep into gratitude. But I think it's really, really important as well to have gratitude for your future and visualizing that future self and visualizing and believing that the vision God gave you is going to come to pass. So spending time in that gratitude, past, present, and future is what's going to soothe you in this space in the gap.
So, I mean, use what was given to me. What else has been deconstructed and returned to you, but in a better way. And reflect on, like Amy said, where are those places where God has already shown up for you? But don't discount your own level of work in that progress, where you are the one physically moving through this space, physically moving through this reality, right? And so giving yourself that celebration and giving yourself that gratitude at the same time. And, knowing that if you did it with that, you'll do it with this. So I just want to say thank you again for listening. If this message resonates, please share it with friends and family. Don't stay invisible. Give us a like. Throw down a comment. Please don't forget to subscribe so you're getting those alerts every week that we release a new video. And as always, please share. We love to hear your own testimonies and where you're creating a space for you to have that voice. So use it.
And don't forget the journal prompts are under each one of our podcasts, and they will help you to go a little deeper. And if you jump on over to Facebook in our group, we will be starting shortly a little bit of probably once a month. Just jumping on and seeing if anyone has any questions about the journal prompts, or if you want to go any deeper, we'll be there for you in that way.
All right, everybody. Thank you. A beautiful week ahead and enjoy this incoming season.